I look forward to Dan's comments and interaction with you at this moment, because it's a moment when I feel a sense of careful optimism about what's going on, and identifying the reasons kind of gives you a sense of where to keep pushing. I say this against a background of messing around with these issues since 1969, when the president made me chairman of a cabinet task force on the oil import program. President Eisenhower had thought that if we imported more than 20% of the oil we use, we were asking for trouble in national security terms. And we examined that. Then I was Secretary of Treasury when we had the first Arab oil boycott. It was a mess. And then I watched, and I was Secretary of State when we did the Montreal Protocol. So I saw something that worked, and that was satisfying. And I've been very interested in the climate issues and energy issues since returning here to Stanford. So with this perspective, things are looking much better. Let me explain why. First of all, the logic chain here is, first, is there a problem? Second, what's the reason? Third, what can you do about it? And how practical are these things? So there have been a lot of people sort of hung up on what's the problem? Is the climate warming? I think that argument is about over. There are very few people who will get up and say it's not warming. And the science and all is impressive, but you don't need it. All you need to do is look around and see that a new ocean is being created in the Arctic, that Greenland is melting, there's big melts in the Antarctica, and these are all happening because it's getting warmer. And so there it is. So I think that there has come to be a kind of realization, I'll put it, that this is something that's happening. Now, why is it happening? There's more controversy. The people who denied that it was happening are now falling back on it's just happening naturally. But I think the evidence is very clear that carbon has a lot to do with it. And they have these cores that go way back and show a very close relationship between the emergence of carbon and heat. So this needs to sink in further, but it's getting there. It's getting there enough, so I think you can easily argue what we argued in the case of the ozone layer in the 1980s. There were people who didn't think what we were worried about, President Reagan and I, was to be worried about, but they agreed that if it happened, it would be a catastrophe. So instead of vilifying them the way you do nowadays, we reached out and said, okay, well then maybe we should have an insurance policy. You have an insurance policy on your house, you're not hoping your house burns down, but just in case. So it's an appealing concept. And I think perhaps we are at the point now where even people who doubt could say, okay, what's an insurance policy? What does it look like? And I think the insurance policy that we can point to isn't very expensive. What would it be? I think a great deal is being accomplished, and I had the privilege of visiting out in your area not too long ago, and I have the privilege of chairing the advisory committee for the MIT Energy Initiative and the one here at Stanford, so I see what these people are doing. A lot is taking place with energy R&D. And we're learning how to produce energy in different ways that are benign as far as the climate is concerned. And I might say many of these things are turning out to be good from an economic point of view and especially good from a national security point of view. For example, as I understand it, we're fairly close to learning how to do large-scale storage of electricity. Well, that does wonders for solar and wind, but it's a huge national security plus because our grid is so vulnerable. So there's an interplay here and a reinforcement. So in the insurance policy, then, I think support for reasonable energy R&D we have it right in front of us. We can see the results. And we had an exercise where we brought 12 MIT scientists here to Stanford, and a similar number of Stanford ones about 3 years ago. And we spent a couple of days talking about what we call game changers. And then we had a similar meeting at MIT about a year or so later. And then a while ago, we took our act to Washington. And Speaker Boehner set us up with the House Republicans on the Energy Committee. These are supposed to be the guys who are difficult. Selling them energy R&D was a piece of cake, not a problem. Mm-hmm. Where they fall off the rail is when you say, okay, let's have the government go into business and get this going. No way. I fall off the rail too. So the interesting thing about developments in places like Stanford and MIT is that the existence of a research enterprise that is substantial and is getting somewhere, has meaning, attracts private funds because they want to know what's going on and make a contribution. And after all, a lot of universities are scared to death of private funds. Stanford, we figure, what the hell, Silicon Valley is just a big Stanford spinoff. We know these guys. But after all, these are the people who know how to commercialize something and scale it. So welcome to the party. I understand at NREL when I was there, you said you have a lot of industry people who come and sponsor research projects in your place. So that's the same idea, that we're not talking about abstract research, we're talking about something useful, and we're relating it to people who know how to take something useful and make it work. So you have all these developments on the energy R&D. I don't think that's enough. And what I advocate beyond that is a revenue-neutral carbon tax. I think a carbon tax is a much cleaner way of putting a price on carbon than a cap-and-trade system is. Cap-and-trade is a tax, too, just disguised. And I would make it revenue-neutral for two reasons. One, you remove any sense of fiscal drag. It's not a tax that's slowing down the economy, because you're returning the money to the economy. And so you get rid of the fiscal drag problem. And you also can pass it out. I think it should go in checks to individuals. And the check should have it on it a little note, your carbon dividend. So I'm looking forward to getting my carbon dividend once in a while. What's not to like? So, but there's a lot to be worked out on it. But I think that if we had a revenue-neutral carbon tax, as they have in British Columbia, and combined with strong energy R&D, we'll produce things that will work and that will do the job. And putting a price on carbon makes people conscious of trying to do something different. And it is fascinating to see the rise in the business community of the numbers of companies who build an expectation of a carbon price into their investment plans. That's happening all over the place. So businesses expecting it, whenever the politicians get around to it. So my reason for optimism is that I think the basic problem is broadly being realized. And second, that the consequences are becoming clear, so that even if you doubt the reason, you might be willing to take out an insurance policy. And the insurance policy is not that difficult to identify. And it's not that outrageous. It won't cause things to. The British Columbia, the per capita rate of increase in their GDP is, since they put this in, is slightly better than Canada as a whole. So you can't say it's killed off their economy. So I think this can be done if done right. And if done right, we'll give the insurance policy we need to come to grips with the problem that is clearly here. So put me down as optimism. We have work to do, but we can see the path of the work and feel reasonably confident that it's going to work. Thank you.